my whole attention on her, and watched her very closely, not staring, for she hated that, and always carried out her orders properly. I noticed another thing, and that was that whenever she wanted anything to be brought to her, such as cigarettes, handkerchiefs, etc., she would only look at the article, and then look at anyone who happened to be there at the time. There was always a table in the room on which everything she needed for the day was placed. I got so used to her habits that after a short time I knew just what she wanted by looking at her eyes, and I was very seldom mistaken. This pleased her a great deal. She was strong-minded, and would always act the way she thought was right, and had perfect confidence in herself. At times I have seen her looking very sad. She had strong emotions, but her will was stronger. She could control herself beautifully, and yet she liked people to sympathize with her. Only by actions, not by words, for she did not like anyone to know her thoughts. I am sure my readers will think how hard it was to be the court lady of Her Majesty, the Empress Dowager of China, but on the contrary, I enjoyed myself very much, as she was so interesting, and I found that she was not at all difficult to please. The first day of the 4th moon Her Majesty was worried over the lack of rain. She prayed every day after the audience for 10 days, without any result. Every one of us kept very quiet. Her Majesty did not even give any orders that day, and spoke to no one. I noticed that the eunuchs were scared, so we went without our luncheon. I worked so hard that morning, and was so hungry. In fact, all the court ladies were. I felt sorry for Her Majesty. Finally she told me I could go, as she wanted to rest a while, so we came back to our own quarters. I questioned our own eunuch Kwang as to why Her Majesty was worrying about rain, for we were having lovely weather then, day after day. He told me that Lao Fo Ye, old Buddha, was worried for the poor farmers, as all their crops were dead without rain for so long. Wang also reminded me that it had not rained once since I came to live at the Palace. I did not realize that it was so long as 2 months and 7 days, and on the other hand it seemed to me longer than that, for the life was very nice and pleasant, and Her Majesty was very kind to me, as if she had known me for years already. Her Majesty took very little food at dinner that night. There was not a sound anywhere, and everyone kept quiet. The Young Empress told us to eat as fast as we could, which puzzled me. When we came back to our waiting room, the Young Empress said to me that Her Majesty was very much worried for the poor farmers, and that she would pray for rain, and stop eating meat for 2 or 3 days. That same night, before Her Majesty retired, she gave orders that no pigs were to be slaughtered within the gates of Peking. The reason of this was that by sacrificing ourselves by not eating meat, the gods would have pity on us and send rain. She also gave orders that everyone should bathe the body and wash out the mouth in order that we might be cleansed from all impurities and be ready to fast and pray to the gods. Also that the Emperor should go to the temple inside the Forbidden City to perform a ceremony of sacrifice called Qing Tan. He was not to eat meat or hold converse with anyone, and to pray to the gods to be merciful and send rain to the poor farmers. His Majesty, the Emperor Guangxu, wore a piece of jade tablet about 3 inches square, engraved Zhai Qie, the meaning being just like Qing Tan, not to eat meat but to pray 3 times a day, both in Manchu and Chinese, and all the eunuchs who went with the Emperor wore the same kind of tablet. The idea was that this jade tablet was to remind one to be serious in performing the ceremonies. The next morning Her Majesty got up very early and ordered me not to bring any jewels for her. She dressed herself in great haste. Her breakfast was very simple that day, just milk and steamed bread. Our own breakfast was cabbage and rice, cooked together, with a little salt. It was tasteless. Her Majesty did not talk to us at all, except when giving orders, and so, of course, we kept silent. Her Majesty wore a pale grey gown, made very plain, with no embroidery or trimmings of any kind. She wore grey shoes to match, not to mention her grey handkerchief. We followed her into the hall, where a eunuch knelt with a large branch of willow tree. Her Majesty picked a little bunch of leaves and stuck it on her head. The Young Empress did the same, and told us to follow her example. Emperor Kwang took a branch and stuck it on his hat. After that, Her Majesty ordered the eunuchs and servant girls to do the same. It was a funny sight, and everyone did look queer with a bunch of leaves on the head. The head eunuch came and knelt in front of Her Majesty, and said that everything was prepared for the ceremony in the little pavilion in front of her own palace. She told us that she preferred to walk, as she was going to pray. It took only a few minutes to cross the courtyard. When we arrived at this pavilion, I noticed a large square table was placed in the center of the room. A few large sheets of yellow paper and a jade slab, containing some vermilion powder instead of ink, with two little brushes to write with. At each side of the table stood a pair of large porcelain vases, with two large branches of willow. Of course, no one was allowed to speak, but I was curious and wanted to find out why everyone had to wear the willow leaves on the head. Her Majesty's yellow satin cushion was placed in front of this table. She stood there and took a piece of sandalwood and placed it in the incense burner filled with live charcoal. The Young Empress whispered to me to go over and help Her Majesty to burn them. I placed several pieces in until she told me that was enough. Then Her Majesty knelt on her cushion. The Young Empress knelt behind her, and we all knelt in a row behind the Young Empress and commenced to pray. The Young Empress taught us that very morning how to say the prayer. We worship the heavens and beg all the Buddhas to take pity on us and save the poor farmers from starving. We are willing to sacrifice for them. Pray heaven send us rain. We repeated the same prayer 3 times and bowed 3 times, 9 times in all. After that, Her Majesty went to her usual morning audience. It was much earlier than usual that morning, for the court was returning to the Forbidden City at noon. His Majesty, the Emperor Kwang was to pray at the Forbidden City, and Her Majesty always wanted to accompany him whenever he went. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when the audience was over. She ordered me not to bring any jewels for her to the Forbidden City this time, for she would not need them at all. I went to the jewel room and locked everything up, and placed the keys in a yellow envelope, sealed it, and placed the envelope among the others, and gave them to a eunuch who takes care of these things. We packed all her favorite things. Her gowns were the most important things to pack. She had so many, and it was impossible to take all. I noticed that the Court lady who was looking after her gowns was the busiest amongst us. She had to select gowns enough to last 4 or 5 days. She told me that she had selected about 50 different ones. I told her that Lao Tzu Tsung might stay at the Forbidden City 4 or 5 days, and that she would not need so many gowns. She said it was safer to bring many, for one was not sure what would be Her Majesty's idea for the day. Packing at the court was very simple. Eunuchs brought many yellow trays, which are made of wood, painted yellow, about 5 feet by 4 feet and 1 foot deep. We placed a large yellow silk scarf in the tray, then the gowns, and covered them with a thick yellow cloth. Everything was packed the same way. It took us about 2 hours to pack 56 trays. These things always started off first, carried by the eunuchs. His Majesty, the Emperor Kwang the Young Empress, and all the Court ladies had to kneel on the ground for Her Majesty's sedan chair to pass the palace gate. Then we went in search of our own chairs. The procession, as usual, was pretty. Soldiers marched